This week on the Autocar Show, Ford's all-new hulking SUV, the Endeavour. We take a peek at Volvo's S90. We drive Mercedes' sporty SUV, the GLE 450 AMG Coupé. And we chat with India's Dakar star, CS Santosh.
Hello and welcome to the Autocar Show. Wishing everyone a happy 2016. It's going to be an action-packed year again in the auto industry because we never stop working. And of course, we always bring you action-packed episodes. We begin with something new. This car has been a long time coming. The Endeavour was one of the first few really traditional big SUVs around. And almost 12 years later now, it's here in a brand new avatar. Well, let's find out if a decade later it can pack in as much punch. The front is the most upright part of the styling with the sculpted bonnet, the large double-slatted grille and the skid plates that give it beef. The rest is quite changed actually with the steeply raked windscreen and the angled belt line. The rear too gets a powered tailgate minus the spare wheel which is now placed under the chassis. Despite the softening of the corners, it's still a gigantic, imposing SUV. There are a lot of these annoying alarms that you will hear consistently. And sometimes even when the car is stationary and you don't have your seatbelt on, it will just keep going every couple of seconds. But when you get into this vehicle, it also amplifies how large it is. I've had to haul myself into this seat, and from behind the wheel, it feels huge. Well, the interiors are much nicer than before. They feel far more upmarket and richer. There's a lovely double-stitched leather which covers the top of the dash. The central part of the dash has nice glossy plastic, satin metal. Of course, there's the integrated touchscreen over here now. And I also particularly like the dials and the two displays that are around them which give you a whole load of information. Materials and textures add to the richness of the cabin. There are the leather seats and the chrome accents around the cup holders and power sockets, and all the buttons and knobs as well. There are plenty of storage places and practical grab handles all over, with it being an SUV. The titanium version we were driving came with LED lights and the Sync 2 system that has Bluetooth connectivity, streaming and voice command. Variants will also get the active park assist that steers for you as well. Those are all the features and all that's up front, but what's in it for the passengers? As you can see, there's plenty of room here in the middle row, and in fact I think it's a lot wider now, so you feel more space on the inside. You still sit a little low to the ground, but that's much better than before as well. And the seats themselves extremely comfortable, so I think long journeys will be easy over here. You have the rotary AC vents which are easy to direct. So overall a pretty comfortable place to be, but let's check out the third row as well. It's actually an exercise. If the seats aren't up, you have to pop around to the rear, open the tailgate, put them up, then come round to the side. You would have had to sit in the seat and move it forward on the rails before you flip it down, as otherwise it's close to impossible. And then after all that, you have to squeeze into the rear seats. Once you're there, you'll find that they're low to the ground and quite hemmed in. So I realized it's best to keep those rear seats flipped down and use the additional space in the boot. Though the boot is large enough, even with the seats up. But back to the front behind the wheel and on the road to test if the Endeavour's performance is better too. Now once you're driving, the Endeavour really doesn't feel as large as when you look at it or just initially get behind the wheel. And that's largely due to the steering wheel. It's light and easy, so nipping in and out of traffic gaps is simple. And you know what really actually surprised me about this is when I stopped to take a U-turn, I was pretty surprised with the fact that this just did it in one go. I didn't need to make a 3-point turn, and that's pretty amazing for a car of this size. You see, it's as simple as that. It feels surprisingly light to drive, and that's really a boon. Also, without the spare wheel at the rear, parking is easier with an unfettered rear view. The new Endeavour comes with a choice of engines, a 5-cylinder 3.2-litre diesel and a 4-cylinder 2.2-litre diesel engine. Now, of course, give us a choice and we'll always pick the bigger engine first. 3.2-litre it is. This engine is vocal, and the more you push it, the more vocal it gets. Also, it doesn't really react a whole load better if you flatten your foot. So, it's better to drive it a notch down anyway. Now, this 3.2-litre takes a little while to get going, but once you're in the meat of the band, it does feel strong. Once you're past the 2200 RPM mark, you'll find it pull strongly and powerfully, but that's more felt in flat-out accelerations. In normal driving conditions, it's not that easy. What really spoils the party here is the gearbox. It's slow to react, it doesn't shift down quickly. The manual mode improves the delivery of power and you can really feel the might of it. Still, in everyday conditions, it's the smaller engine that surprised us. The 2.2-litre engine feels more refined in comparison to the 3.2-litre. Whether you're ambling around or whether you push it harder, it's less noisy. Not only that, though it had the lower power and torque, it actually delivered it much better. Now, this 2.2-litre engine is the one that I would pick because I find that it gets off the line much easier, it feels more responsive, and most of us drive in city conditions most of the time, so this is the engine that will feel better over there. Now, it may not be as strong as the 3.2-litre and it may not get up to speed as quick as that one does, but it never feels underpowered and it settles into a cruise pretty comfortably too. Overall, the slightly lighter two-wheel version 2.2 also felt more planted to drive and tucked into corners better. Even the steering had slightly more feel. Now, grip is impressive, and you find that you can carry much more speed into corners than you would expect to in a car of this size. With the ladder-on-frame setup, roll is really unavoidable, but it's well contained and the Endeavour never feels top-heavy. It also doesn't pitch much when you brake hard, and as a result you feel secure behind the wheel at all times. The only place where there's room for improvement is the brakes. They could have been a little sharper. Of course, with that ground clearance you can pretty much go over anything, but even on bad sections of road like this, I'm finding craters, potholes, anything, it just smothers them. If you are in the backseat, you will be tossed around a little, especially as you pick up the pace. But as far as the segment goes, I have to say the Endeavour does a good job of the ride overall. Well, we did this test before the launch, and so estimate the prices to start around 24 lakh for the two-wheel drive 2.2-litre and go up to around 30 lakhs for the top-end 4x4 3.2-litre. Well, like I said in the beginning, these new Endeavours have been a long time coming. Were they worth the wait? I definitely think so. There's a lot that's new here. They feel far more modern, they look different, the interiors are nicer, there's more space, they drive nicely, they ride nicely, there's a range of engines for you to pick from, so a lot going for the new Endeavour. Now, if I were to choose between these two, the 2.2-litre would be my pick of the bunch, and here's why. Because 80% of our time is spent in cities, so this is the engine that actually responds better, drives nicer. Overall, the car also feels better to drive as far as handling goes. And of course, it's going to be cheaper and the one that's more frugal to run. Well, one new car. Next up, there's something else that's new that's on its way to India. Shahpur takes a look at the Volvo S90.
Welcome to the Autocar show from Gothenburg. The car we've come to see here, of course, is a Volvo, but it specifically is this new stunning S90. Now, the S90 will replace the S80 all over the world in Volvo's lineup, but the interesting bit is that it will be in India sometime around Diwali this year. So let's take a closer look at it and see what it's really about. Volvo's new S90 is a car that sets its sights firmly on the German luxury trio. Engineered and designed to take on the A6, the 5 Series and the E-Class, this new flagship, however, has a look all its own. Now, the first thing you think about when you see this car, especially from the side in profile, is the length of the car. Huge wheelbase, plenty of space between the wheels, and it's probably the longest car in its class. What designer Thomas Inglehart wanted to do was give it a regal stance. And another thing that Volvo called front axle to dashboard ratio. See the gap between the front axle and the dash? It's supposed to give you the impression of having a big engine under the hood. The S90 will initially come with Volvo's smooth and punchy 232 bhp diesel. What sets it up is a long bonnet, this new iron mark grille really prominent, the concave surfacing of this grille, and of course the Thor's hammer headlights that look really stunning. But around the rear, it's really different. There's a lot of detail here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different lines, these C-shaped tail lights with a lot of detail there. Some people will love it, some may not. But what it will do is it will give the S90 a really distinctive look. The S90 takes a big step forward on the insides as well. It's probably just as good as the XC90, and that's because it has a lot of the elements from that car. There's this big touchscreen, the center console with this beautifully crafted gear lever, this fantastic stop-start button, this lovely steering wheel. Of course, I do miss the fact that it's got no paddles, but you never know, in later cars it could get it. The takeaway, however, from this interior and sitting on these lovely seats is that this could be the best interior in its class. Now, most S90 owners will be sat in the back in India. They'll be chauffeur driven, and the seat here is pretty comfortable. It's really nice. There's a decent amount of thigh support. The back support is excellent. It's nice and soft, a bit softer the seats than the XC90, which makes it nice. Could have done with a bit more leg room, but all in all, it would be very competitive with any of the cars in this class. And I think that's just what Volvo needs. Volvo will get the top of the line inscription version here initially, and prices are expected to start around the 45 lakh mark. What Volvo really has to do now in India is work hard on improving the reach of its dealer network. Do that and Volvo could be well on its way to standing shoulder to shoulder with the big boys.
A big, hulking SUV with a sporty coupe-like roofline, that's not exactly new, is it? BMW's been doing it for years with the X6. But this one, it's new. It's from Mercedes. So, what sets it apart? Well, for one thing, it's a petrol. And normally that would be a bad thing. But with the recent clampdown on big diesels in Delhi, it has an appeal. And it isn't just any petrol, it's a mouthful. It's the Mercedes GLE 450 AMG Coupé. Now yeah, it does have AMG in its name, but it isn't an all-out AMG. The engine is a V6, not a V8. All of them are turbo now. The difference is the horsepower. This has 362 horses or thereabout, whereas a proper AMG would be completely bonkers with, well, upwards of 450, wouldn't it? But you gotta admit, this is plenty enough. This GLE is part of a new AMG Sport lineup, which is charged with delivering comfort and usability expected of a Mercedes, but with a big dose of AMG thrills. And the engine does just that. It is creamy smooth and delivers plenty of torque, even when driving leisurely. But wind the engine up and it will thunder to its 6,200 RPM red line. No doubt, it is helped by some new hardware.
So the GLE Coupé uses Merc's new 9G Tronic gearbox. So it's got 9 ratios and it feels very impressive in terms of responsiveness, and at higher speeds when you're cruising on the highway, you realize that it can be very smooth and very quick in the way it changes gears. But at lower speeds, typically when you're going on and off the gas and want quick responsiveness, it can feel a bit clunky over there.
A bigger disappointment though is the way it sounds. It isn't AMG enough even in Sport Plus mode. In Comfort mode, the engine feels lazy in a nice way. Overall, the Sport mode feels the most enjoyable for road use. So even though the GLE's drivetrain is very capable, it isn't very exciting. No doubt, its 2.2 tons of curb weight saps some of the performance and blunts the dynamic edge.
Now first, when you go into a corner, you tend to be careful because you can feel the weight. But when you enter the corner, the four-wheel drive system with a 40-60 split no doubt gives it a lot of composure and grip to let you carry more speed and let you carve a cleaner line than you'd expect.
The all-independent suspension setup comes with air springs that stiffen up in the sportier modes, and that no doubt helps things along. Now even though you have a lot of grip, the numb steering won't tempt you to go faster.
And when you start driving it harder, faster, attacking corners, find that it slips into understeer. But at the end of the day, it won't thrill you. It'll do everything fairly neatly. It's very capable, but just not very exciting.
One aspect where the GLE did far better than expected was with its ride quality.
It manages to soak up bumps and road conditions really quite well. I thought that this must be on 19-inch rims, but it's actually on 21-inch rims.
The GLE Coupé is absolutely ready for India. There's plenty of ground clearance, and the lift mode increases it further.
But the annoying thing is that there's a constant body movement even on smooth roads like on the expressway. You can feel it rocking side to side, which isn't great for a car that you'd want to use for doing longer distances.
There are areas where the Mercedes wows you, but those aren't the reasons why you'd head out to buy a Mercedes GLE 450 AMG Coupé. And then there's the practicality. The boot is massive, and very sensibly the GLE packs a space saver.
Now this is a big surprise. The back seat is properly usable. I think 2 passengers in the back would be very comfortable. Ample knee room, great headroom as well. Getting a passenger middle might be a little uncomfortable because this juts out, but on the whole, for a sporty looking SUV, I think very usable.
The interiors, as expected, are well built and handsome. So that's just it. The Mercedes GLE 450 AMG Coupé is impressive, but just not as fascinating as we'd expected it to be. But what will make it very attractive is its price point. At an expected price tag of 1 crore rupees, the GLE 450 AMG Coupé would make for a sufficiently stylish, fun and usable SUV from Mercedes that just manages to stand out from the crowd. The Dakar Rally. There's 14 days and over 9,000 kilometers of the harshest terrain in the world that's taken at full throttle. On 2 wheels, the odds are stacked against you. CS Santosh, the only Indian to have gambled with the Dakar and come out on top, finished an incredible 36th in 2015. We caught up with him before he headed out to take on the Dakar once more.
Last year I rode the KTM. KTM, everybody knows, is the best rally motorcycle there is in the world. They won numerous titles and all that jazz. But this year I'm going with a smaller team. It's the Suzuki of Spain team. The Suzuki people are known to be very passionate about their motorcycles. And with the KTM, I was just another component. But here I feel like I'm the heart of the engine, you know, so it's great to be in a team that has so much love for me. You know, in the Dakar we carry a lot of weight, which is in the fuel tank. So the way the fuel tanks are designed and the way the fuel actually is carried on the motorcycle is really important. It handled phenomenally well for a bike that's carrying so much weight.
And just kind of like in the sense of what's it going to be like for a day in the Dakar for you?
after the first day, the Dakar is a huge rush. For those 14 days, you're trying to manage time, which goes from everything from brushing your teeth to having a shower to making your road books to go for the briefings. All this happens in a day, and if you lose a half an hour of sleep on the first day, it accumulates the next day, and it just progressively you get fatigued.
Spending so much time on the motorcycle, how do you keep yourself focused and motivated? Are there times when you're just like, I can't do this, or it's enough?
You know, in the stages, it's similar to what you just said. It's not like it's enjoyable the whole time. Sometimes there are parts of it that you like, the other parts of it that you suck, that you don't like. So I think you need to be overall a good rider, and trying to enjoy and do well at the parts that you don't like is actually essential to do well at the Dakar. It's easy to go and do the stuff that's easy, but it's the hard stuff that separates the men from the boys.
And the 2016 Dakar is well underway, and Santosh was doing India proud. Despite a lowly starting position of 127, Santosh used the Suzuki well to move up into the 70s in just 4 days. Sadly, persistent mechanical issues have brought his challenge to a complete halt. And if we know him well, his dream of flying the Indian tricolour even higher at the Dakar has only been postponed to 2017. That's all for this week, but do remember to tune in next week to catch our first drive of Mahindra's all-new compact SUV, the KUV 100.